Good morning. I do have one announcement that we missed from this morning. We do have a birthday to celebrate, and we will say it's 22, not 21, but 22 years for Janice Milhone. And if you see her, congratulate her. Whole family's here. Lowell said everybody's here to celebrate. So congratulate her on her birthday. And we're not singing. So, all right. Turn this thing on. All right, so when we looked at summer schedules, everybody's just kind of broken up here and there on when we can teach and can't teach. So I'm going to cover the next 2 weeks, and then I'm going to take a couple, 3 weeks in August as well. So over the next 2 weeks, looked at doing a short study. And there's a number of different ways we can study the Bible. We can go it from start to finish. We can go it by book. We can go it by chapter, by verse. And in one spot of this study Bible, it says that, a word study can sometimes be the easiest study, or it could be sometimes the hardest study. And so what we will discuss is a single word, the Greek word, not the different words that our different translations have ended up with, whether New American Standard, NIV. The King James is the one that we'll use most for today's discussion and next week's discussion. What we won't cover is all of the different ways that it's been used. Okay, so I just want to focus on the one word. We're going to use it in a context, meaning we're not just going to study the one verse. We're going to look at a few verses and see how it's used, and then see the different ways that it's used throughout. And for those of you who want to know what, be grateful that I won't do, no movies, not showing any movies. But I also won't beat up any parallels to the Old Testament. We're not going to count words and letters and do math and other things. So we're going to keep it simple, just focus on the words. All right, slide. Slide. I did turn it on. There we go. All right, so we could all agree that since we had an election, our country's all unified, we all go in the same direction. All right, maybe not. So wanted to look at unity of purpose, and what does it mean? There were a bunch of different words that all came out of different translations that I saw. So unity, unanimous, united, of one mind, of one accord. All of those were used over and over again when I went through the concordance. We're going to focus on one accord and what that means. Another one that we saw was the difference between a cardinal number and an ordinal number. I needed to get reminded about that. So, where's Wally at? I need my English major here. I'll just have to rely on Grace then. Not for this one, but for one coming up. All right, so in this case, it's not just the number one, and it's not just the ordinal one. It's the entirety of being one. And as started off joking, that unity does not mean that we just had a vote, and so it was 7-5, and so 7 wins. That's not the way that this is working. I think we see from our own country as well as our own personal experience, when you end up going to a vote, somebody's not happy. Somebody's not, getting what they thought they wanted in some form or fashion. And so this is not about just having the majority. All right, so go into the Greek for the word one, and I'm going to ask for help on pronunciations on many of these. So whether this is Heiss, if I'm German, trying to pronounce it that way, or he is, no. Mia was for feminine, and hen was neuter for one, translating into Greek. All right, and then unity comes from hen, and I'm not going to pronounce it, he notes. So what is henotis, henotis, and then this part, the difference between when a word is used as an adjective or an adverb. And so for me, I was going to ask Wally to make sure that I'm using these terms correctly going out there. But when you are using it to not modify, but further explain a noun, that would be the adjective. And then if you're trying to explain an action, it would be the adverb. So in this case, it's mainly used as an adjective of one collective thought process. So what's the word? Oops. Homothumadon. How to pronounce it, Clark? Help. Homothumadon. All right, I'm going to butcher it again, I guess. So when we looked at this one word, it only appears 12 times in the New Testament. That's it, 12 times. 11 of them occur in Acts and 1 in Romans. And so for it to be only prevalent in one book, mainly Acts, we could easily sit here and say, well, it was just one of Luke's words, and he used it, and he's a doctor, and we're done. But that's not as simple as it is, because it shows up in many different contexts throughout all of Acts. In this case, this word means to be of one mind, one spirit, that collective group where no one is in disagreement, for good or for bad, but that one spirit. And so we're going to look at it in a couple different ways. The first one, I want everybody to open up to Acts chapter 1. We'll start at the beginning. All right, so in the book of Acts, most scholars would say that the book of Acts was written, authored by Luke. There is some disagreement, but not much out there. John's physician friend is referred to, and then you also have Theophilus being mentioned both at the beginning of the Gospel of Luke as well as in the book of Acts. It seems that it's the same author for both of those along the way. There's plenty of internal evidence when we look at all of the words that are used in the context and how it's presented, that it's actually one author and that it would be Luke. So if we could, Acts chapter 1, somebody read verses 12 through 14. And then 14.
These all continued with one accord in prayer, supplication, with the women and Mary, and the mother of Jesus, and with his brothers.
All right. So in 14, we first hear with one accord. And it caught me a little bit because I promised no math. But I was counting, and there's only 11, and I had to be reminded that they hadn't picked the 12th disciple again to replace Judas. But it was their duty, it was their obligation to return to Jerusalem, and they all did. And did they know what they were going to do at that time? Did they know what was going to happen? They all came back together. They didn't know what was going to happen next. All they knew was they had to be together, and they had to be here in Jerusalem. And they were waiting for the Holy Spirit to empower them. But they were all there together praying. That's that unity of spirit, unity of purpose that comes through here when they say with one accord. All right. Next one. Acts chapter 2. 1 through 4. All right, so with one accord, and this time they were all one accord, one place, and then the Holy Spirit did ascend upon them based on the fact that that's what they were there praying for, and they were filled with the Holy Spirit. Any comments on this one, comparing it to the last one, where they were there praying all together, not knowing what was going to happen, and now that they were there and the Holy Spirit came upon them? So is it easier to be of one mind, one accord in good times or in bad times? In good times? Why do you think good times, Jim? I think we'll find some examples of when everybody's suffering together, that makes finding that goal a little bit easier. Brought the country together. Any other thoughts on unity when everything's going well or when everything's going bad? I think they're both more than possible. I know in my job I've seen it where families get ripped apart after somebody passes and start arguing over silly stuff. Or silly in my mind because I'm not there. All right. Next one. All right, so the next two. Going to Acts chapter 2, verses 41 through 47, and talking about a unity of purpose right now. So Acts chapter 2, 41 through 47. Now, we generally start with 42, but I wanted to go back to 41 just because that number was just amazing to me. You know, that 3,000 were added that day. 3,000 souls were saved. The power of the Holy Spirit to move that many people based on listening to the word, to all act on it. I thought that was showing some unity right there, and I wanted to include that part with this verse, 46, with one accord breaking bread. On the negative side, when you start to read this, you might think about, communism, as far as, okay, everybody's got everybody's, and, what's yours is mine. But that's not what they're saying here. It's the word common that was there at the end of 44. They had all things in common, which meaning is what's mine is yours also. It's the big difference between what's yours is mine to now what's mine is yours also. And so just looking at it being commonism rather than communism, just taking your time to read that one verse before you get to 46, talking about one accord, breaking bread. What picture do you get of this right now? We talked about 3,000. We talked about the number that we're getting added every day. What do we usually use these verses to do to some, when we're using them to teach or educate? I was thinking about the energy, that they gain from participating in their local, their community, from their church. As we were getting out of the vehicle this morning, on the way in, Sawyer asked me, Papa, do you like coming to church every Sunday? And I said, yes, I love coming to church every Sunday. He goes, you never get bored? I'm like, no, I don't get bored. I may not pay attention a little while, but I'm not bored. But it's that energy, that collective energy that we all give each other, that when we share that love between each other, that's that unity of spirit, of purpose as well. That participating together, we build each other up. All right. Thoughts? Andy? As a group of Christians, though, did they really worry about that at this point? just not worried about it. All right, so the second verse up there, if we could go to chapter 4, verses 23 through 30, and see how this one's used. So going to verse 23, what did the Sanhedrin command? What's 23 referring to? Said, don't preach. Don't do it. And so what was the response? They all lifted, the 24, they lifted their voices to God with one accord and said, O Lord, it is thou who didst make the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. They acknowledged the fact that God is the one that's all powerful, that they were not going to be intimidated, they were not going to stop preaching Jesus, and that they were going to continue as a group of Christians to go out and continue to spread the word. It's called the prayer for boldness. It's kind of the little subtitle I have for this section. And that's something that we could all take. It's easy to be bold in here. It's always easy to be bold in here. It's harder to be bold when we're outside. When you're at work, when you're in another group, in an unfamiliar setting, that's when it's hard to be bold. But we're told, we're instructed to continue to preach Jesus. Now, I know I'm a little bit unique maybe in this, but when somebody tells me I can't do something, that just makes me more determined to do it. I've said it's not possible, like, all right, we'll give it a shot. Yeah, and so that's the way I feel in here, where they just said, all right, you could say whatever you want, but we're gonna keep going. We do not care what you say. Do not bother me with the realities of physics. That's what my boss always used to say. All right, next one. So let's jump forward to Acts chapter 5, and this is our last one. We're talking about one accord with a group of Christians and the apostles. So please, if somebody has, and everybody should know this story, Acts chapter 5, the first 11 verses. Bless you. And at the hands of the apostles, many signs and wonders were taking place among the people, and they were all with one accord in Solomon's portico. Thanks, Jim. All right, we're wrapping it up here. But now the one accord is not all in a positive vein. What just happened? They just witnessed two people drop dead, and now everybody is in fear. This is an example of I got mine. Now, did everybody know what had happened and why that they were no longer with us? Or did they? I was just thinking, probably not everybody knew exactly at that moment why, but they all knew that they were dead. And so something had happened drastic that caused them both to fall. All right. This one ends, and I know I'm out of time, but Solomon's portico, Solomon's colonnades, I had to do some research on that one because I had always just read right through it and didn't understand the significance of it. So that's where I'm going to pick up next week when we continue this lesson. So thank you all for your participation and attendance. It's always great to see everybody.